Okay, crystals, what you're seeing here is actually a lens cover that I made with yummy yummy Skittles on there. This is actually a scene from book 2, and you can consider it a gift from me to you. It's a nice Kuro and Heather scene that I wrote a while back. So from book 2, way ahead of here. There were very few humans in Shiroi's castle. Whether that was due to the cold weather or the location, Heather couldn't really tell. But for some reason, it seemed to be having a negative effect on Kuro of all people. "I have no one to play with," he often whined. "I hate it here." "Then leave," Heather scoffed, despite herself. But oh, she was so sick of listening to him complain. Why did he do that? Sometimes Kuro writhed around like he was actually in pain, and others she caught him fidgeting or else breaking things out of frustration. It seemed also that his attention span had grown even shorter. He seemed constantly restless and wouldn't sit still anymore. Sometimes he would fidget for hours on end until she turned around and finally snapped at him. Tonight, it seemed, was one of those nights. "Quit! Quit what? Messing with my hair!" "But I like your hair." Kuro said that, but still conceded. Finally, he released Heather's hair and made to climb up onto her lap instead. Heather complained about this too, but it was getting very difficult to care about anything she said. "Ugh, I just need to make this girl bleed." Kuro absently shoved her back and pinned her down on the mattress, nuzzling his face into her neck. Oh, she smelled so very sweet. Why was it that he could just never get enough of this girl? Maybe it was something about the warm comfort of her body pressed firmly to his. Maybe it was something about the way her pulse beat ever so softly in her sweet-smelling neck. He could almost feel the priceless red nectar flowing through every precious inch of her perfect body. God, how long had it been since he'd tasted blood, felt it warm and satisfying on his fingers, or spreading its pleasure out onto his tongue? "You make me so hungry," he mumbled, pressing a long open-mouthed kiss to her neck. Was that supposed to be a compliment? Heather tried to shove him off, but Kuro clung even tighter than ever. What was his deal? She didn't know whether to be flattered or annoyed with the fact that he just couldn't seem to get enough of her. Tonight would mark the 3rd in a row that he kept her awake just to cover her in kisses and whisper sweet, ridiculous nothings in her ears. "Kuro, get off already. You're making me hot." He snorted in laughter, and she flinched, praying he wouldn't accidentally set her hair on fire. But he didn't. Instead, he just said, "Good, 'cause you make me hot, too." "That's not what I meant, you stupid horny lizard." He mumbled something else, something that sounded like, "I'm not horny," but she couldn't really tell since he wouldn't remove his lips from her neck. There wasn't any point arguing. He was strong enough to keep her pinned there all night if he wanted. And besides, it probably only amused him further when she struggled. "Fine," Heather grumbled, deciding to just let him have his way. "Just don't leave any marks." She absently brought a hand up to run her fingers through his long, silky hair. He purred when she did that, like an overgrown cat, and he still refused to stop kissing her. Speaking of marks, he seemed very fond of the scars on her neck. His fangs almost perfectly matched them sometimes, and this made her freeze up. If he bit down, but Kuro wouldn't. He knew exactly where the most vital arteries were located, and surely wouldn't dare risk it, even if he did like the taste of her blood. She had told him not to leave marks for a very particular reason. He really would bite her otherwise. She could feel the frustration in those forcibly restrained, powerful jaws, the way those razor-sharp fangs ghosted, tempted over the pulse of her very life. Midnight black dragons, children of the god of death. Sometimes she loved him enough to forget his species, yet sometimes it was all she could see. The only reason she denied him. The fact that his kind belittled and yet lusted after humans was so sickening. How many humans had Kuro himself already senselessly murdered? Before she had met him, how had he dealt with his inborn insatiable bloodlust? Is it wrong of me to just assume he had blood on his hands, and then hesitate to allow those same hands on her body? He'd hurt me too, if he weren't afraid that I'd leave him. He tried to hide it, but she knew, even without seeing. Kuroshi genuinely wanted to hurt her. She wasn't sure why, however. Either he liked the taste, or it was just an instinct passed down in his genes. It was probably the same bloodlust that had him so restless. If she were to give in and let him indulge himself, would it go away, or get even worse? Kuro, He didn't even pause, just continuing trailing kisses along the blue veins on her arms. Did he physically worship her to show affection, or to distract himself? Why do dragons hurt people? Now he stopped. Kuro sat up, looking surprised, and Heather joined him, trying to limit the impatience in her voice. I know that's what you're thinking about. I won't hurt you. He'd said that too quickly. Really? Yeah. Why? 'Cause you haven't done anything worth punishing. Heather scoffed, deciding to let that one slide. Well, that's not even what I asked you. Why do you want to hurt people in the first place? Just instinct, he shrugged, the thrill of the hunt. Hunt? It's like... He paused, trying to find the right way to explain it. Unfortunately, only Kuroi's words came to mind. Cats. You ever had a cat, Heather? No, I like dogs better. They're dumb and they do everything you say. Well, I'm more like a cat. How? Well, cats chase things. They'll kill anything as long as it's smaller than them, for no real reason. They don't always eat the things they kill, they just chase them. Dragons are like that, except everything is smaller than us, so we'll hunt down anything that moves. It's not that we're evil or whatever, we just like to hunt. You like to kill things? No, just to sink my teeth into them, you know? It feels amazing. She raised an eyebrow at the look of pure pleasure on his face, and Kuroshi hastily added, But I wouldn't do that to you. You're not my type. What? Heather didn't mean to ask that. Inside she knew she should be glad she wasn't the type the girl liked to attack, but somehow she still felt a bit insulted. It sure seems like he likes me. I'm not your type? No. Hunting things makes them scared. I don't really like to see you looking scared. Well, okay, maybe a little bit, but not, really scared of me. Oh, that's what you meant. Duh. Heather sat back. She hadn't even begun berating herself for that stupid question before he swept down to interrogate her. Did you think I'd say I didn't like you enough to bite you? No. She tried not to flinch. Those powerful hands made it obvious enough, and his red eyes were so intense. He held her so tightly it almost hurt, leaning closer until the two were almost nose to nose. 'Cause I do like you. She only turned away, flushing red in response, but he wasn't finished. She found herself pinned back down suddenly, with his hot breath on her neck, sending shivers up her spine. I like you so much. I want to sink my everything into you. Now she really did shove him away, but Kuro didn't regret admitting the truth. In fact, the delicious red tinge on her face just made him want to do it even more. He wished he could at least get his claws into her, carve his name across her chest. He loved every one of her scars. Oh, if only he'd been the lucky one enough to create them. You're insane. Perhaps. He simply knocked her defensive hands out of his way and nuzzled closer, whispering the secret he knew she'd never admit. But you'd like it. She said nothing, just as expected, but he felt it when those nervous little fingers tightened on the back of his arms, as if he'd actually leave her alone now. You know, Heather. She turned with him so the two could lie side by side, rather than one atop the other. He remained close, however, and whispered the rest. It only hurts the first time. She only smiled, thankful that he'd decided to get off of her before saying that. Yeah, right. Of course I'm right. Uh-huh, sure. Was that a yes? No, I think that was a yes. No, it wasn't. Sounded like one. He pulled her closer, but Heather resisted, dodging before he could kiss her. He liked that just as much as she did, and nuzzled closer even while she shook her head. Don't. Don't what? You're teasing me. Think so? Yes. He said yes again. No, I didn't. Now you're lying. No, I'm not. Yeah, you did. Only bad pets lie, Heather. I think you need to be punished now. Kuro, stop! She didn't even manage to choke the rest out, too overcome by insuppressible giggling. And he automatically crawled back on top of her, kissing her once for each of those sweet little sounds. And for what felt like the first time in ages, Kuro felt himself smile of pure, eager joy. For a human, a weak female human, and yet only she kept him comforted like nothing else ever would. She made his heart race, yet tamed his restless dragon blood, and on nights like this, with golden mornings promised afterwards, Kuroshi knew true joy, something he'd never dreamt to know before. I don't care about anything but her. He wished he could say that out loud, just as he wished he just never had to stop kissing her. She belonged to him, whether she denied it or not. Maybe she wasn't so human anymore, awake and alert for the third night running, but she certainly didn't act like the age-old celestial goddess that she truly was. Heather didn't remember her first marks, nor had she ever allowed anyone to touch her as much as she allowed him, and so she was, in many ways, still innocent, still his own. That thought soothed him like no other, so that sometimes, just sometimes, marks didn't even seem to matter. The two still belonged to each other.